وإن تتولوا يستبدل قوما غيركم ثم لا يكونوا امثالكم. اللهم استخدمنا ولا تستبدلنا.
You're not going to silence my ass by invoking the Holocaust or calling me an anti-Semite. I don't give a shit. Okay, I see what's happening clearly. I'm going to speak up about it, and no one's going to shut me up. Period. End of story. We see what's going on. The entire international community sees what's happening. The Israeli government wants to genocide and ethnically cleanse Palestinians, not just from Gaza, but the West Bank too. Look at the terror they're dealing with in the West Bank.
What I find amazing, hang on, Shabbos, please. Hang on. I want to go to Emily. What I find extraordinary, I genuinely mean this, is there seems to be either a lack of awareness of what the rest of the world is now beginning to feel about this, or a deliberate putting head in sand and saying, it's not happening, we don't want to hear it. Because, if I was an Israeli, if I was Jewish right now, it would be impossible not to be aware of how the world is beginning to feel about this, and that this has got out of hand, it's disproportionate, too many children are being killed, there seems to be no end game for this whatsoever other than, as Shabbos has just said, getting all the Palestinians out, right? Which is clearly what Smodrich, the finance minister, wants to do. And it's clearly what other members of that cabinet agree with him about. I just don't get why there's no awareness or deliberately willful blindness towards the growing international opprobrium from people like me, right, who've been very supportive of Israel's right to defend themselves. But there's just no apparent, all there is a digging in and a sort of blind refusal to admit that anything the Israeli government is doing is wrong, when most people, including two Israeli former prime ministers, have said it's not only wrong, but criminal.
People in Gaza need to know that it's the beginning of the end of the Zionist state.
Okay.
The Zionist state will not survive. To stay in the same place, they have to kill and kill and kill. That's the only thing they know how to do. And that's not a surviving strategy. And that's not a winning PR strategy for the world. And the more people who wake up, and certainly tens of millions of more people have woken up to the truth, to the barbaric nature of what Zionism is and what Israel really represents, there's no going back for them. So for decades, pro-Palestine advocates have been on the defense to explain why defense of Palestine, why advocacy for Palestinian liberation is not anti-Semitic, why criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. That is no longer the case. Zionists are on the defense now, explaining why they support apartheid and genocide. They're no longer going to be allowed in the same spaces as progressives. The whole idea of progressive except for Palestine is no longer real. You are no longer going to be seen as progressive or liberal if you are Zionist. It is a racist, colonial, genocidal ideology, and it has been exposed. And at this point, anyone with a shred of humanity is on the side of Palestinians. And that's the hope we have to hang our hats on. That's the hope that we have to keep striving for. And that's what gives me optimism. Because I see the truth. I see the world waking up. I see the mass movements in the streets. Apartheid can't stand. We can't justify apartheid.
Yeah.
And we can't justify genocide. And those crimes need to be held accountable and they need to be stopped. And Israel Israel has put itself on the defense for its whole existence. I mean, that's why it's survived and thrived, because it's inverted reality. It's flipped reality on its head, and it's invested tens of billions of dollars into controlling the narrative in the West. But we see Palestinians dictating their own reality for the first time with social media. And those lies don't hold anymore because we see the truth. Just unfettered truth. You just open your phones and you see with your own eyes.
It is Hamas that has rejected repeated ceasefires, including the most recent one that would have seen at least 2 months of ceasefire, as well as the release of 10 hostages, as well as the bodies of dozens.
Pause in fighting is not a ceasefire. I'm so sick of the rebranding of a ceasefire. A 2-month pause in war is not a ceasefire. Period. End of story.
Then Hamas is welcome. Hamas is welcome to release all of the hostages.
I said what I said.
If you release all of the hostages,
that is not a
then we can talk
ceasefire.
about it.
This idea that you release the hostages and as soon as the hostages are released, Israel will continue their genocide is unacceptable. Unacceptable. But anyway, continue.
You know what else is unacceptable? The fact that there are more than 50 hostages being held by
You're
Hamas
unacceptable.
for more
You're
than 600
vile
days.
individual. Let me ask you something. Oh, you were on this very show a year ago debating Abby Martin. And you said, you fancy yourself a journalist. During that debate, you said that Israel has no interest in occupying Gaza. Israel is now very obviously and overtly claiming they intend to occupy Gaza indefinitely, and they announced the construction of 22 illegal settlements in the West Bank, which they also intend to annex. Can you now admit to the world that you are incorrect?
No, the situation on the ground changes. And beyond that, this could have been avoided in the first place.
You're a liar and you're vile.
Continue with the ad hominem
You're a propagandist for the Israeli government and you disgust me. Let's not forget about the
Humanitarian Foundation even confirmed it was
You people
Hamas.
disgust me.
They confirmed
There's
it was
no
Hamas.
humanity
And the only
people
thing
like you,
disgusting
Emily.
here
No
is the person
humanity.
who is intentionally lying and blaming the
Shut up.
IDF.
I can't
when
even
the
handle
IDF
your
is
voice.
the one been distributed already.
You are a defender of genocide. You are a genocider and a defender of
Humanitarian
genocide. You're disgusting.
I know you don't like facts, Anna, but this is the reality.
Disgusting. Right. I know. One trick pony. You guys have nothing else. It's the only thing you can do. You're not going to silence my ass. You're not going to silence my ass by invoking the Holocaust or calling me an anti-Semite. I don't give a shit. Okay, I see what's happening clearly. I'm going to speak up about it, and no one's going to shut me up. Period. End of story. We see what's going on. The entire international community sees what's happening. The Israeli government wants to genocide and ethnically cleanse Palestinians, not just from Gaza, but the West Bank too.
أما فيما يتعلق بالتكامل والتطبيع، نعم بالتأكيد ناقشنا ذلك في كل المحطات بما في ذلك في السعودية، وأقول لك أن هنالك مصلحة واضحة بشأن السعي وراء ذلك، وهنالك مصلحة للمنطقة برمتها فيما يتعلق بتحقيق ذلك الهدف، ولكن هذا سيتطلب نهاية أو انتهاء الصراع في غزة.
We have good negotiations continue till now. We gotta see where it will go. We hope that it will reach a place that it will ease the life of the Palestinians and get Israel back, as a player in Middle East.
There were reports that you had suspended talks.
No, that's not true.
Not true. So you think, if you were to characterize it, are you close?
Every day we get closer.
לא סובל את חמאס. בוא נגיד בשפה פחות... לא סובל אותם. זה מבחינת אחים מוסלמים, זה סכנה לביטחון הלאומי של מצרים. אבל הוא לא יכול לראות בעזתים שנכנסים לרפיח עם תהיה פעולה כזאת, כי אז הוא יתפס כמשת"פים של ישראל. ולכן, מעל לפני השטח הוא אומר, אני רוצה להכניס כמה שיותר סיוע לעזה. בשיחות סגורות זה משהו אחר לגמרי, תראי את דבריו.
הרוח מן רבנה פין. רוח מן רבי פין.
בדיוק. הוא רוצה להכניס לעזה דברים, ישראל לא נותנת. אם הוא היה יכול, הוא לא מכניס אפילו גרגיר, זה לא מעניין אותו.
עמיה, הוא מדבר במסרית מדוברת לעם, זה מדהים, וכל אני נופלת מזה, זה נשמע כמו הסרטים של מצרים, ארוך מן רבי פין. אשכרה.
זה כמו הסרטים היו מצרים.
אשכרה, אפשר למות מזה, כי זה כל כך לא נהוג בטלוויזיה בעולם הערבי, אבל בעוד שהאינטרסים ומאחורי דלתיים סגורות, זה משהו אחר. השלטון וגורמי הביטחון המצרים יודעים מה האינטרס המצרי, שהוא מאוד דומה במקרה הזה לאינטרס הישראלי. אפרופו חמאס, אתה אמרת לא סובל, הוא שונא אותם.
Part of this measure would require Israel not to impede access to Gaza by fact-finding missions, international mandates and other bodies. However, it is noted first that access to Gaza from Egypt is under the control of Egypt.